I was supposed to be done with this city. 32 years on the force, 20 in homicide. I had the transfer papers signed, my retirement party scheduled. Quiet house on the edge of nowhere, just waiting for me. One last week, a few more reports, and I'd be out. But then, the call came. Detective Archer, we got a body. I almost let it go to voicemail. Should've, really. But old habits die hard. And some part of me, some stupid, stubborn part, answered anyway. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It turned the streets into mirrors, the gutters into overflowing veins. This part of the city always stank of mildew, piss, and gasoline, but the rain gave it an extra layer of filth, the kind that soaked into your bones. The body was in an abandoned church. Of course it was. I stepped under the faded stone archway, my boots sinking into the rotting wood. Stained glass windows loomed above, cracked and blackened with soot. The place had been closed for years. Gangs used it for dealing, squatters for shelter. Now, it had a new occupant. The first thing that hit me was the smell, the stink of old blood mixed with damp rot. The second thing was the silence. Even the rain outside seemed muffled, like the church itself was swallowing the sound. Then, I saw the body. A man was kneeling at the altar, arms stretched unnaturally wide, as if in a mock prayer. But it wasn't faith that kept him there. Thick iron spikes had been driven through his wrists and ankles, pinning him to the floorboards. His head tilted back, mouth frozen in a silent scream. His eyes were missing. Not just gone, replaced. 2 smooth white stones sat in the empty sockets, each one carved with an unfamiliar symbol. Behind him, smeared across the wall in thick, dark strokes, was a single word. Repent. I crouched beside the body, my partner standing stiffly behind me. Detective Eric Vale, young, eager, fresh out of ice, still thought he could save the world. He was staring at the corpse like he was going to be sick.
What the hell is this?
He muttered. A message, I said.
A message for who?
I didn't answer. We ID'd the victim as Daniel Hargrove, a corporate lawyer known for getting criminals off on technicalities, the kind of guy who made big money defending the worst kind of people. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses. The church had been abandoned for years, but that didn't mean much. The rain had washed away any outside footprints, and inside, the floor was too warped to hold tracks. There was one final detail, a small one, but it made my stomach turn. Hargrove's tongue had been cut out. It was sitting on the altar in front of him, like some kind of offering. I've seen some sick shit in my time. Bodies dumped in alleys, heads in dumpsters, killers who don't even blink when you read them their rights. But this shit wasn't just murder. This was theater. And I had the sinking feeling that it was just the opening act. The second body came 2 days later. If I had any doubt that the first one was part of something bigger, this one erased it. This was a pattern, a statement, and it was only getting worse. The apartment stank before I even walked inside, a thick, choking stench of rotting food, bile, and decay. I stepped over flies as I crossed the threshold, my partner gagging behind me. The kitchen table was set for one, a single chair in front of a massive feast. The victim was still there, slumped forward into a pile of half-eaten food. But his stomach, Jesus, it had split open, like a balloon overfilled with water. His abdomen had burst, spilling partially digested food, bile, and blood onto the floor. His insides were bloated beyond natural limits, as if he'd been force-fed until his body couldn't take it anymore. And just like the first victim, his eyes were missing, replaced with 2 smooth white stones. Scrawled across the kitchen wall, written in thick, greasy handprints, was another message. Indulge. The victim was Philip Rossetti, a notorious Wall Street investor known for profiting off economic crashes. He ruined thousands of lives with shady deals. The fridge was completely empty, like everything inside had been used for this one meal. No signs of forced entry. The food on the table included rotting meat, moldy bread, rancid butter. It was like he'd been forced to keep eating even after the food had gone bad. The cause of death was clear. His stomach ruptured internally, sending him into shock before he drowned in his own vomit. Just like the last victim, his tongue had been removed and placed on his plate like a final course. Hargrove was a lawyer. Rossetti was a finance guy. Both had profited off others' suffering. Both had their tongues removed. Both had been left with a message. My gut twisted. I already knew what was coming next. We weren't looking for a killer. We were looking for a bloody executioner. And then, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Are you paying attention, detective? Before I could reply, another message came through. Unknown number. You should be. Then, a final text. An address. And below it, a single word. Confess. The text sat on my screen like a loaded gun. Confess. I stared at the address below it. My stomach clenched. You okay? Vale asked from across the squad room. I locked my phone and shoved it into my pocket. Yeah, I wasn't. It was nearly midnight by the time I reached the location. An abandoned warehouse, sitting on the edge of the industrial district, long since gutted and left to rot. Rust dripped down the walls like dried blood. The streetlights barely worked, flickering weakly against the rain. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel. My pulse was too steady, too calm. The kind of calm that only came when you'd seen too much. Then, I stepped out. The door to the warehouse was already open. A trail of wet footprints led inside. Someone had been waiting for me. The interior was a graveyard of old machinery. Rusted conveyor belts, broken crates, stacks of forgotten pallets. The air was thick with mildew and oil, and something else. Something rotting. My boots echoed as I stepped inside. My fingers hovered over my holster. A single light flickered in the distance, casting long, shifting shadows against the far wall. And in the center of the room, a chair. Someone was sitting in it. A bag covered their head. Their hands were bound behind them, chest rising and falling in panicked breaths. Blood pooled beneath the chair. Not fresh, dark and sticky. I moved closer. The smell hit me full force. Copper and sweat. Something spoiled underneath. Then I saw the note pinned to their chest. One word, scrawled in thick black ink. Confess. I pulled the bag off. It was a man in his late 50s, eyes wild with fear. His mouth was duct-taped shut, cheeks streaked with dried tears. His clothes were soaked in blood, but he was still alive. For now. I recognized him instantly. Pastor Michael Lane. His church had been shut down years ago, after allegations surfaced. Hushed whispers of abuse, embezzlement, exploitation. Nothing had ever been proven. No charges stuck. And now, here he was, waiting for judgment. I ripped the tape off his mouth.
Please,
He gasped.
you have to help me. He's still here.
A sound echoed behind me, something metallic scraping against concrete. I spun around, gun raised. Nothing. Just the shadows shifting along the walls. Lane was sobbing now, struggling against the restraints.
He said you'd understand.
he choked.
He said you...
A sharp snap rang through the air. Lane's body seized up violently, his back arching, muscles locking. His eyes rolled back, and then he collapsed, dead. A wire had been looped around his neck, thin, razor sharp, the kind that would tighten with the slightest movement. It had been buried just beneath his collar, invisible at first glance. The second he jerked too hard, it had sliced straight through his windpipe. A death trap, and I walked right into it. I turned back to the chair. The blood was still spreading outward, soaking into the concrete. Then I saw something else. A small white envelope taped to the back of the chair. My name was written across it. Archer. I tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a single Polaroid. My breath caught in my throat. It was a photo of me, taken tonight, taken from inside the warehouse. A perfect shot of me standing over Lane's body, like I was the one who killed him. The ink was still drying. Someone had been in the room with me, watching, waiting, leaving me a gift. And at the bottom of the Polaroid, a message was scrawled in familiar, jagged handwriting. Look closer. I flipped the photo over. Another address was written on the back. Somewhere I knew. Somewhere I hadn't been in years. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a killer targeting sinners anymore. This was personal. The next victim was tied to me, and if I didn't stop it, I already knew what the next message would say. Judge. The address led me to a place I hadn't been in years. 104 Silvercrest Drive. A rundown house in a forgotten part of the city. The kind that blended into the rot. Boarded windows, dead grass. The rain made it worse. Water pooled in the cracks, the whole place sagging under the weight of its own decay. I sat in my car for a long time. Something felt wrong. Not just dangerous. Final. Like walking into my own grave. But I went inside anyway. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house was empty. Just dust and silence. No furniture. No light. Just a single chair in the center of the living room. On it sat a manila folder with my name written across the top. I picked it up, flipping it open, and my blood froze. Crime scene photos. But not from our case. They were from 30 years ago. An old forgotten case from my first year in homicide. A botched investigation. One where I had arrested the wrong man. His name was Alan Reeves, accused of murder, convicted on shaky evidence. He had pleaded innocence until the day they put him in the chair. The real killer was never found. And now, as I flipped through the files, I saw something that shouldn't be there. A photo of me. A photo of me standing over the victim, gun drawn. A photo that didn't exist. Until now. My phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. It's over, Detective. Then, sirens. Bright red and blue lights flooded through the windows. A loudspeaker crackled to life.
Archer, drop your weapon and step out with your hands up.
I staggered backward, my pulse slamming against my ribs. They set me up. This whole case, the murders, the messages, the patterns. It was never about stopping a killer. It was about turning me into one. They arrested me like I was some two-bit criminal, threw me to the ground, wrenched my arms behind my back. Someone read me my rights, but the words felt distant, like a dream I wasn't awake for. Inside my head, I was screaming. I had spent 3 decades chasing monsters, and now I was wearing their face. I tried to explain, tried to tell them about the texts, the staged evidence, the real killer. But no one listened, because every piece of truth had already been rewritten into a lie. The press called me the righteous killer. The public believed I had spent years hiding my sickness behind a badge. And worst of it all, some part of me started to believe it too. Because if I was innocent, And that meant that the world I had spent my life protecting was never just. That meant the rules were never real. And that was something that I couldn't accept. They made it quick. They always do when it's one of their own. The prosecution painted me as a sadistic, righteous killer, punishing sinners like some kind of twisted executioner. I had no alibi, no one to vouch for me. I watched the jury's faces, and I knew it was over. When they read the verdict, it felt distant, like hearing someone else's death sentence. Guilty on all counts. I spent 2 years on death row waiting for the end. 2 years locked in a cell, counting the days, listening to the whispers of other inmates. Some of them knew me. I had put them here. Now they laughed when they passed my door.
Finally got yours, huh, detective?
I stopped answering. There was no point. They walked me to the chamber on a cold winter morning. The warden asked if I had any last words. I thought about it. Thought about saying I'm innocent. Thought about telling the world that they had let a real monster go free. But I already knew. No one would believe me. They strapped me down. A priest mumbled something about forgiveness, but we both know this wasn't about redemption. This was punishment. A needle slid into my arm. The world blurred at the edges. And just before the darkness took me, I saw him, standing in the viewing room, watching. The real killer. His face was calm, almost gentle. He smiled, and I finally understood. I wasn't the final victim. I was the final masterpiece. The one who would die without ever being guilty. The one whose death would complete the pattern. The lights dimmed. The world slipped away. And the last thing I heard was a whisper. Repent. A week after my execution, another body was found. Same symbols, same staging, same message. The papers called it a copycat. The department dismissed it. But I knew the truth, because I'd seen his face, and I knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was never gonna stop. Because this was never about punishing sinners. It was about creating the perfect ending. A story so believable, so complete, that no one would ever question it. A narrative murder. A crime where the villain never existed. And the real killer? He was probably watching the news right now. Smiling. Waiting for his next character to play their role. And the cycle would start again.